When she starts ignoring you, it's not silence, it's a test. She's watching to see if you'll chase her like every other man, or if you'll stay so calm, so unbothered that she starts wondering what kind of man doesn't beg for attention anymore. If this is you, you're staring at your phone right now, wondering why she hasn't replied. You replay the last message you sent, questioning every word, every emoji, every moment that might have turned her off. You scroll up the chat. She used to reply fast. She used to laugh at your jokes, send hearts, talk for hours. Now, nothing. Just silence. Cold, empty silence. And the longer it lasts, the more your mind turns against you. Maybe this feels familiar. You tell yourself she's probably busy. Maybe she's tired. Maybe she'll text tomorrow. But deep down, you feel it. That gut-tightening unease. That quiet panic whispering, something's wrong. You keep checking your phone every few minutes, pretending you're not waiting, but you are. You're waiting for her to care again. You try to stay calm to play it cool, but your mind keeps racing. Did I say too much? Was I too available? Should I have played harder to get? The more you think, the worse it gets. You remember how it used to feel when she chased you, when her energy was warm, when her attention made you feel wanted. And now that it's gone, it's like someone pulled the ground from beneath you. If this is you, you're probably asking yourself a quiet question you'd never say out loud. Why does it always feel like the moment I care, she stops? You don't want to admit it, but it hurts. Not just the silence, but what it represents. Rejection, uncertainty, the feeling that maybe you weren't enough to hold her attention. And so, like most men, you start plotting your next move. Maybe I should message again. Maybe I should post something that'll make her notice. Maybe I should show her I don't care. But every one of those thoughts comes from the same place: fear. Fear of losing her, fear of not being seen, fear that her silence means you failed the test you didn't even know you were taking. Because that's what it feels like, doesn't it? Like you're trapped in some invisible competition you never agreed to, where whoever cares less wins. And right now, she's winning. Her silence feels like control, and your confusion feels like weakness. You start thinking about what she's doing, who she's talking to, if she's already moved on, and that thought that maybe she replaced you burns. If this is you, you're not crazy, you're human. You cared. You gave her attention because you liked her. You wanted connection, not games. But here's the brutal truth. In this world, emotion without strength gets punished. When a woman senses that your happiness depends on her attention, she pulls back. Not because she's cruel, but because something deep inside her is wired to test whether you'll crumble or stand tall. You see, this isn't just about her ignoring you, it's about what your reaction says about you. That's what she's really watching, and your silence, your energy, your composure. She's not waiting for a text. She's waiting to feel what kind of man you are when things stop going your way. So if this feels familiar, take a breath. Don't chase. Don't explain. Don't try to make her see your worth. Show it through your calm, through your absence, through your self-respect, because the moment you start trying to win her back, you've already lost your frame. And maybe that's what this entire silence is for, to show you the truth. That power isn't about getting her attention. It's about controlling your own. That attraction isn't built through words, it's built through presence, and that the man who can stay silent in chaos becomes the man every woman eventually respects. So think about it. What if her silence isn't rejection at all? What if it's the exact moment she's deciding whether you're the kind of man she can respect or just another one she can control? What if the right move isn't to make her notice you again, but to make yourself the kind of man she could never ignore? Listen, when a woman ignores you, the first mistake most men make is they panic. They start overthinking, assuming the silence means something's wrong, that they've done something to push her away. And from that panic, they do exactly what kills attraction faster than anything else. They start chasing. They try to fix it. They reach out again, hoping to reconnect. They act from fear instead of strength. That's where everything starts to unravel. Because when a man reacts emotionally to a woman's silence, he unknowingly communicates one thing: her attention controls him. And once a woman feels that, she can't respect you the same way anymore. Respect and attraction go hand in hand, and the moment respect drops, everything else follows. Here's what most men never realize: a woman's silence isn't always punishment. Sometimes it's curiosity, sometimes it's instinct, sometimes it's her way of feeling whether you're steady enough to handle uncertainty. She's not always doing it to hurt you, she's doing it to understand you. That's the first principle I want you to understand. A woman doesn't test to destroy you, she tests to see you. When she pulls away, she's asking a subconscious question: is this man emotionally anchored, or will he lose himself the second things don't go his way? And most men do lose themselves. They go from calm to chaos in a matter of hours. They start chasing, pleading, proving, as if a man's worth could be measured by how many times he tries to get her attention back. But masculine energy isn't about proving. It's about presence. It's about staying grounded, even when things feel uncertain. When a woman ignores you, that's not the moment to act. That's the moment to observe, to sit with the discomfort, to breathe. Because in that silence, something far more important than her attention is being tested: your self-control. The second masculine principle is simple but powerful. Your response defines your value, not her reaction. When she ignores you, she's putting spell the woman to fix, chase, convince. The grounded man controls himself, his tone, his reactions, his energy. And that difference changes everything. When you stay centered, when you refuse to let her silence throw you off balance, you shift the power dynamic completely. You go from seeking validation to being validation. You're no longer trying to get her to choose you. You're showing that you're already chosen by your own sense of worth. That's something most men don't understand. Your value isn't proven when things are going well. It's revealed when they're not. When she ignores you and you can still stay composed, focused, and patient, that's when your masculine energy becomes magnetic. Not because you're trying to manipulate her, but because you've mastered yourself. See, a man who reacts is easy to predict, and anything predictable loses mystery. When you chase, she knows exactly what's coming next. But when you don't chase, when you pull back, stay calm, stay busy, stay grounded, she starts wondering what's going on inside you. She starts to feel your absence. That's when curiosity replaces control. That's when attraction quietly starts to rebuild itself. Here's the truth few men want to hear: silence is not your enemy, it's your mirror. It shows you exactly where your sense of self is built. If your confidence collapses when she stops responding, it means your confidence was built on her. But if you can stay calm, stay focused on your mission, and still show up as a man of direction, that silence starts working for you, not against you. That's why chasing never works. You can't convince someone to value you by proving you don't value yourself. You can't make someone feel attraction by showing them that their attention dictates your emotions. Every time you chase, you lower your energy. Every time you beg for attention, you teach her you're willing to lose yourself to keep her. And no woman truly desires the man who needs her to feel complete. She desires the man who's already complete, who chooses her but doesn't need her. So if she's ignoring you right now, don't get emotional. Don't act out. Don't try to play games to get her back. Instead, get quiet. Focus on your life, your goals, your health, your growth. Let her feel the difference between a man who reacts and a man who simply observes. Because when you don't chase, when you don't fold, she starts to feel that silence too, and that silence begins to speak louder than any text you could send. Masculinity at its core isn't about dominance. It's about composure. It's about holding your frame when your emotions want to take control. A woman respects a man who doesn't lose his sense of self just because she's testing his patience. When she feels that you can handle emotional distance without collapsing, that's when she starts to trust your strength. Understand this. You don't earn respect by explaining yourself. You earn it by embodying calmness when chaos hits. You earn it by showing restraint when your ego wants to explode. You earn it by staying silent when every insecure part of you wants to send that one more text. And the irony? That's usually the moment she reaches back out. Not because you said something clever or played some tactic, but because your silence felt different. It didn't feel like punishment. It felt like power. That's what composure is. Power disguised as peace. The truth is, this situation, her ignoring you, it's not really about her. It's about you learning to detach your emotional state from someone else's behavior. Because the moment you master that, you become untouchable. You stop living in reaction to the feminine, and you start leading with your masculine. Most men live their lives trying to get approval, affection, validation. They chase women, they chase attention, they chase closure. But the man who lives in his frame, who understands his value, doesn't chase anything. He attracts, not because he's lucky, but because his energy commands respect. And that's what I want you to remember. You don't need to act like you don't care. You need to genuinely not care. Not out of ego, but out of self-worth. When she ignores you, it's not a loss. It's an invitation to rise above your old reactions. It's a chance to prove to yourself that your peace is not for sale. So the next time this happens, she pulls away, she goes silent, she stops responding. Don't react like every other man. Smile, breathe, let her go. Because if she's meant for you, she'll circle back. And if she doesn't, she just revealed she was never aligned with the man you're becoming. That's calm authority. That's masculine energy. That's the power of a man who's no longer moved by silence because he's finally learned to listen to his own. He's sitting alone on the edge of his bed, phone in hand, the glow of the screen painting pale shadows across his face. The apartment is quiet except for the faint hum of the city outside. And yet inside, his mind is loud. Every tick of the clock sounds like a judgment. Every vibration that doesn't come from her feels like a punch in the gut. He replays their last conversation over and over, her words, her emojis, the little laughs that used to make him feel like the world had tilted just for him. Now that warmth has evaporated. The messages hang in the chat like ghosts, reminders of how fast things changed. Did I say too much? Did I scare her away? Was I too available? His thoughts spiral, circling around every interaction he remembers, dissecting them under a cruel mental spotlight. He puts the phone down for a second, hoping the act of release will quiet his racing heart, but it doesn't. He runs his hands over his face, staring at the ceiling, counting breaths that never seem to settle. Outside, cars pass. Distant laughter drifts up from the street, the ordinary life of the world continuing while his own feels paused. The silence between them stretches like a canyon, wide, empty, and echoing. Maybe she's busy, he tells himself. Maybe she's tired. Maybe this isn't about him at all. But even as he thinks it, he knows the truth. It feels like a test, a silent challenge he wasn't prepared for, a puzzle he has no key to. Why now? Why this? Why me? The questions claw at him, more insistent than ever. He imagines what she's doing, the scenarios spinning like a storm behind his eyes. Is she laughing with someone else? Did she forget he exists? The thought makes his chest tighten. His phone buzzes, a friend's message, but he ignores it, too consumed by the absent ping that should have come from her. Every second stretches, every heartbeat thunders, and he realizes he is waiting. Waiting for her to care, to notice, to reach back. He leans back, closes his eyes, and pictures the way things used to be. The warmth in her voice, the way she leaned in when she talked, the small sparks in her eyes when she laughed at him. He remembers the feeling of being wanted, the subtle electric pull that made the world feel lighter, better. And now, in the hollow of her absence, the memory stings. He feels the loss in his chest, in the pit of his stomach, in the ache behind his eyes. He knows he should act. He knows the advice he's heard before. Text her again, show her you care, prove that you're still there. But there's another voice, quieter, stronger, that whispers underneath the panic. Don't chase. Not this time. Not like this. It's a strange sound in the chaos of his mind, calm and unyielding. The voice reminds him that his value isn't in her attention, that his peace isn't something to barter. He sits in silence, listening to the ticking of the clock, to the faint rustle of traffic, to the quiet rhythm of his own breathing. He notices how tense his hands are, how tight his jaw has become. Slowly, he lets his body soften, letting the tension drain into the floor beneath him. The world outside continues, indifferent, but inside, something shifts. A sense of steadiness, fragile but real, roots itself in him. He imagines her reading his absence like a mirror, seeing a man who is calm, unbothered, unshaken. He pictures the curiosity that will flicker in her mind. Why isn't he reaching out? What is he thinking? And he realizes that silence has its own language, a language of presence, of strength, of restraint, a language that doesn't need words to speak volumes. He remembers the times he chased before, the endless hours spent proving himself, the hollow victories of getting a reply. And he understands in that moment why it never felt right. Respect cannot be demanded, he thinks. Attraction cannot be forced. His peace, his composure, is not a bargaining chip. It's the measure of his strength. Hours pass. The apartment grows darker, the hum of the city quieter. He doesn't reach for his phone. He doesn't scroll. He doesn't text. And in the stillness, he feels something shift inside. A strange, heavy relief settles over him. The panic, the longing, the fear, it loosens its grip. He feels steadier, more himself. Not because he has controlled her, not because he has won her attention, but because he has reclaimed himself. He imagines her noticing, not through words, not through gestures, but through the aura that surrounds him. He imagines the subtle shift in the dynamic, the invisible balance tilting slightly, not because he's done anything outwardly impressive, but because he has mastered his inner world. And he understands something fundamental, that this is the moment men are measured, not when everything goes smoothly, but when they face uncertainty and still stand firm, not when they are validated by attention, but when they find validation in themselves, not when they chase, but when they hold their ground. The night deepens, the room is quiet, the phone rests untouched, and in the silence, he finally feels it, a quiet confidence that didn't exist an hour ago. A calm authority that comes from sitting with discomfort and not letting it define him. He realizes he isn't waiting for her anymore. He isn't hoping, pleading, or fearing. He simply is. And in that being, he discovers something profound. The power of his own presence, the weight of his own composure, and the magnetic truth that a man who doesn't bend to silence becomes impossible to ignore. He leans back, eyes closed, breathing in the quiet. Outside, the city keeps moving. Inside, he finally moves too. Not toward her, not away from her, but forward, grounded in himself, unshaken by absence, untouchable in his calm. For the first time in a long time, he feels it. The stillness that holds all strength, the silence that carries all value. And he knows deep down that the next time she looks his way, it won't be because he chased her. It will be because he became the man she couldn't ignore, not through words, not through action, but through the quiet force of his own presence. Most men think that when a woman ignores them, it's always about her. They tell themselves, she doesn't care about me anymore, or I've done something wrong. And from that belief, panic follows. You start to text, call, overthink, overanalyze, trying to fix something that isn't broken. But here's the truth you need to hear. Most of the time, it's not about her at all. It's about what her silence reveals about you. She didn't ghost you. You disappeared from yourself. Think about that. The moment you're chasing attention, begging for validation, or trying to prove your worth, you're surrendering your power. Your value isn't in how she responds to you. Your value is in how you respond to yourself. If she's ignoring you, it's a mirror, reflecting whether you can hold your frame when your desires aren't instantly fulfilled. Most men fail this test because they've been taught the wrong lesson, that attention is currency, and if you don't get it, you're worthless. Another false belief is that you have to act cool or play games to win her back. The reality? Calmness isn't playing hard to get. Calmness is knowing your worth. Men try to manufacture mystery or act indifferent, but it feels fake because they haven't anchored themselves in their own life. True calm comes from internal strength, from confidence in who you are, not from trying to manipulate someone else's perception. When you act grounded, she doesn't just notice, she unconsciously respects it. Many men also believe that ignoring her back is a strategy. They think, if I give her the silent treatment, she'll chase me. But silent treatment is ego, not power. Power is neutral, invisible, unshakable. Power doesn't react to absence or presence. It just exists. The truth is, when you stay calm in the silence, when you don't chase, when you live your life fully despite her attention, you communicate far more than a dozen texts ever could. She's not pulling away from you, she's pulling you toward yourself. Think about all the moments you felt desperate for her attention. The anxiety that creeps in when she doesn't reply immediately, that's a signal. Not that she's rejecting you, but that you've been relying on external validation to feel complete. And that, my friend, is where most men get trapped. They believe they can force attraction or respect through persistence, but what actually draws her in is your stability, your calm, your emotional independence. Here's a third belief that's holding most men back, that rejection is personal. They internalize it, twist it into self-blame, and obsess over every little detail. But the reality? Her silence is neutral. It doesn't define your worth. It doesn't make you less desirable. It simply exposes the areas where you've been giving away your power to someone else instead of keeping it grounded in yourself. Attention is optional, respect is mandatory, and she notices the difference. This is why the man who can stay quiet, who can resist the urge to chase, who can embrace the discomfort without acting impulsively, that man becomes magnetic. Not because he's lucky or manipulative, but because he's living the truth most men refuse to accept. That his energy, his frame, his calm, that's what attracts, not words, not pleas, not social media pings. Let me break it down. When she ignores you, it's not punishment. It's not a test of her loyalty. It's a test of your foundation. Are you anchored in yourself, or are you still tethered to her attention for validation? If you're anchored, silence doesn't scare you. If you're anchored, absence doesn't destabilize you. And when you operate from that space, you don't just survive her ignoring you, you thrive in spite of it. Every panic text, every desperate check-in, every attempt to convince her of your worth, it's proof that your foundation isn't solid yet. And that's okay. Awareness comes before mastery. The moment you start to see that her silence is a mirror, not a judgment, you begin to reclaim your energy. You begin to rewrite your approach to women, to life, to yourself. She didn't stop texting. You stopped leading yourself. This is why most men fail silently. They measure themselves against her attention instead of their own value. They let her energy dictate their mood, their confidence, their self-respect. And then they wonder why attraction fades, why she becomes distant, why they feel invisible. Here's the wake-up call. The problem was never her. The problem was never the messages, the timing, or even the emotional distance. The problem was your response, your dependence on her attention, your collapse in the silence, your unconscious surrender of your own power. And here's the emotionally intelligent truth. This is not shame. This is not blame. This is a wake-up call. Because when you shift your focus from her to yourself, when you stop reacting and start observing, when you anchor your value internally instead of externally, that's when the game changes. That's when her absence stops being a weapon and starts being a teacher. Every man who learns this becomes different. He doesn't chase, he doesn't plead, he doesn't explain. He shows up grounded, calm, unshaken, and women notice, not through words, not through effort, but through presence. They feel it. They feel a man who has mastered himself. So here's the takeaway. Stop believing these lies. That silence equals rejection. That chasing proves worth. That her attention defines your value. Replace them with truth. Silence is reflection. Calm is attraction. Self-mastery is magnetic. And remember these lines because they're not just for this moment. They're for the life you're building. She didn't ghost you. You disappeared from yourself. She's not pulling away from you. She's pulling you toward yourself. She didn't stop texting. You stopped leading yourself. Internalize that. Let it sink in. Because when you finally do, her silence becomes irrelevant. Your calm becomes undeniable. And the man she can't ignore is the man you've always been capable of becoming. The 1% headman doesn't chase, react, or panic when a woman ignores him, because he understands something most men never do. Her silence isn't a wall, it's a mirror. It's not rejection, it's reflection. And in that reflection, he doesn't see her pulling away. He sees an opportunity to pull himself back into alignment. This is what he understands. Attention is not love. Validation is not connection. And no woman's silence has the power to unmake a man who knows who he is. When she ignores him, he doesn't spiral into anxiety or ego. He stays anchored in awareness. He doesn't take it personally because he's not seeking her response to define his value. His value was already established before she ever entered his life. Most men collapse when they feel ignored because their sense of worth is external. They depend on how she sees them to feel confident. But the 1% headman, he's reversed that equation. He knows that attraction flows towards certainty, not need. He doesn't rush to fix, explain, or prove. He moves slowly, intentionally, with gravity, because he knows that his presence, not his pressure, is what makes him unforgettable. This is how he leads, with presence, not pressure. He doesn't try to force her to feel anything. He embodies a state that creates feeling without effort. He's calm, focused, and grounded in purpose. While others are lost in reaction, scrolling her feed, overanalyzing every text, he's in motion. He's building his life, training, learning, creating, becoming. His silence isn't empty, it's full. It's filled with direction, momentum, purpose. Because this is what he understands. Attention that comes from weakness always repels, but attention that comes from strength magnetizes. The difference isn't what he says, it's who he is when he says nothing at all. The 1% headman doesn't use silence as a manipulation tactic. He's not pretending to be indifferent, he's genuinely detached. There's no performance, no bitterness, no pretending not to care. He simply accepts reality. If she's pulling back, that's data. If she's testing, that's fine. If she's done, that's her choice. But none of that touches his core. He's unshaken because his world never revolved around her in the first place. He understands that real power isn't about control, it's about composure. Control tries to make things happen. Composure allows things to unfold. Most men chase because they want relief from uncertainty, but the headman thrives in uncertainty. He knows that the space between messages, the silence between interactions, that's where her curiosity is built. Not through neediness, but through restraint. And that restraint comes from one deep truth: he's already full. He's not trying to get something from her, he's simply expressing what's already within him. That's why his presence feels different. She can sense that he's not seeking, he's being. When she ignores him, he doesn't fall into overthinking. Instead, he shifts into observation. He notices how he feels, where the anxiety hits, what stories his mind starts to create, and then he breathes through it. He doesn't suppress emotion, he alchemizes it. He turns that discomfort into discipline, that silence into focus. This is what makes him rare. Most men spend that time trying to make her care again. The headman spends that time becoming more of a man worth caring about. He upgrades himself instead of chasing validation. He doesn't sit around waiting for her to remember him because he's too busy remembering who he is. He knows that the moment he chases, he teaches her to run. The moment he over-explains, he kills mystery. The moment he doubts himself, she feels it. So instead of forcing connection, he cultivates gravity, that quiet strength that draws everything he needs without chasing anything at all. The headman's mindset is simple but uncommon. He doesn't seek to be chosen. He chooses himself first, and that energy is what makes others want to choose him. When she ignores him, he doesn't feel smaller. He expands. He becomes more focused, more composed, more certain, and that energy, over time, becomes undeniable. He knows that masculine energy isn't about reaction, it's about direction. A man who knows where he's going doesn't stop walking just because someone turned away. The headman keeps moving. His rhythm doesn't break. His tone doesn't shift. His peace doesn't depend on her participation. That's what makes him powerful. Because this is what he understands. A woman can ignore messages, but she can't ignore presence. She can overlook words, but she can't forget energy. And when that energy is grounded, calm, and consistent, it lingers. Long after the texts fade, long after the silence stretches, she still feels it. The 1% headman never tries to prove himself in the moment. He lets time reveal him, because he knows that truth doesn't need to shout, it echoes. His consistency, his growth, his discipline, that's what speaks for him. And even if she never comes back, he doesn't lose. Because her silence gave him something most men never get: clarity. It showed him where his attachments were. It reminded him that love is something you share, not something you chase. And it taught him that the only person he ever needed to stop ignoring was himself. That's the 1% headman mindset. No chasing, no proving, no pretending, just presence, just purpose, just peace. He doesn't react to being ignored, he rises through it. Because the moment he stopped fighting for her attention is the moment he started commanding respect. He sits in the quiet, phone face down on the table. The urge to check it again buzzes in the back of his mind, like a small, restless ache. He almost gives in, but then something in him exhales, a long, tired breath that feels like truth finally surfacing. For the first time in days, he doesn't reach for it. He just sits there, present, still. And in that silence, he hears something he hasn't heard in a while: himself. The sound of his own breathing, the pulse in his chest, the voice that used to be drowned out by noise, by overthinking, by needing her attention to feel whole. That voice doesn't beg, it doesn't chase, it just says, "You're okay. You are always okay." He looks around the room, same walls, same phone, same unanswered messages, but it all feels different now. Because the emptiness that used to feel like loss now feels like space. Space for him to remember who he was before he started measuring his worth in replies and read receipts. It hits him up. She didn't take his peace. He gave it away every time he waited for her to decide if he mattered, every time he made her silence mean something about him. And now he's done. Not in anger, not in ego, but in realization. He doesn't need her message to feel seen. He doesn't need her attention to feel alive. The version of him that begged for validation fades quietly, replaced by someone calmer, deeper, stronger. He smiles, not because she texted, but because he finally stopped waiting. And in that stillness, he remembers. The man who can sit in silence without losing himself never gets ignored for long. You see now, it was never about her silence. It was about what it revealed in you. The waiting, the wondering, the fear. It all existed long before she pulled away. Her distance only showed you the places you'd abandoned yourself. And once you saw that, you didn't need her attention anymore. You needed your own. That's the shift. That's where peace begins. Because the moment you stop chasing what left, you make space for what's real to arrive. A woman's silence doesn't define your worth. Your response to it does.